Hello, welcome to my review of Mega Man 6 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. This game was released on November 5th, 1993 in Japan, and in North America it was released on March 15th, 1994. These dates will actually come up later, specifically because Mega Man 6 was released after Mega Man X and was published by Nintendo in North America. Again, I'll bring this up later, but I do want to set the context before I start the review. Also, before I start the review, I'll go over my rubric for scoring the games. Primarily, I consider what I call the modern fun factor of a game. How much fun is it to look at and to play and to listen to today? I'll also consider the overall context in which the game exists, both historically and within our modern gaming context, and discuss whether or not that context adds value to the game today. Lastly, I'll add a little bit of my nostalgia and personal bias. I'll discuss it and whether or not it influences my ultimate opinion of the game. So now, getting into the modern fun factor of the game, I'll start out by saying there will be spoilers for this game. We'll discuss the whole storyline and maybe allude a little bit to how it might lead into the next game. The controls here are the same as Mega Man 5, which is to say that the controls here are great. Mega Man's run and jump are still static compared to something like Mario 3 or Sonic, but his movement is predictable. He can slide, briefly sacrificing control for a burst of speed, he can short hop, and primarily when Mega Man is shooting, he shoots horizontally in the direction he's looking. And you can charge up the shot by holding and releasing the shooting button. And shooting a slightly weaker blast happens if you release the held shot too soon. The controls here are simple, but they're very elegant, and the game has really tuned them up in this 6th installment. They feel great here the whole time. The big new addition here is the Rush armors. In previous games, you could summon Rush the dog to help you traverse levels with his bounce coil, or the rocket jet, or the submarine. In this game, Rush actually transforms into sets of armor that Mega Man can wear. This armor gives Mega Man a jetpack that allows him to fly, and there is a side gauge that represents how much charge the jetpack has, and it recharges when he's on the ground. There's also a punching armor, where Mega Man sacrifices the charge shot, but he can charge up this punch and break through certain things or hit some enemies for more damage. Visually, I found them both to be really cool and added a new dynamic to looking at Mega Man. They're more striking than just a normal power-up or boss weapon that he would use. They really make Mega Man look different, particularly the punching armor. The punching armor has a cool animation to it that just makes it very satisfying to use. The jetpack burns out quickly, so you have to time it just right, and there's a little bit of nuance in how you use it to the best of its ability. And it also accelerates a little bit as it lifts Mega Man, making it feel kind of tactile in its use. Both of them are really well done here. Now, I'll mention that you don't have these armors right away at the start of the game. I actually don't know how I found them. As I played through the game, when I brought up the pause menu, I realized I had the rocket, and later on realized I had the punching armor. Maybe I missed something in between the levels or not. It didn't really impact my enjoyment of the game, but it's just worth mentioning that you do have to find them or gain them somehow, but I think anyone who plays the game will get them just intrinsically as they play through the game like I did. Both of the armors can be used to find hidden areas and items within the levels, and even some alternative paths. There are some particularly cool moments where you need to punch a block while you're falling in the air, and I love the challenge and uniqueness these armor abilities added to the gameplay. Both the punch and the jetpack are really incorporated into the level design overall. Speaking of level design, from a strict gameplay perspective, the primary robot master levels are really well designed. There are a couple really cool standout features in Mega Man 6's level design. One thing is the various platforms and ways Mega Man's movement can be affected in these levels. Plant Man's level has really cool springs and platforms that you need to shoot open. Wind Man's level has fans that blow Mega Man around and platforms that flip to a new position when they're shot. Yamato Man and Night Man's levels both have cool wheels that Mega Man has to run on. Blizzard Man's level has ice to slide around on, and platforms that count down and explode after Mega Man touches them. It feels like the game is always coming up with new ways to keep the platforming itself unique within each level. Flame Man's level combines the platforming with the enemy placement in really creative ways. There's oil that can be set on fire, and enemies that when you charge up a blast you can shoot them and flip them over onto the oil. Then you jump on them, and jumping on them seems to puff them and move them along the oil while it's on fire to protect Mega Man. This is really creative platforming and really cool enemy design. There's also a boat that bobs up and down. In Nightman's level, you have spikes that come down from the ceiling, and there are rocket platforms in Tomahawk Man's level that aren't anything new particularly, but they're really well done here and keep things feeling dynamic and interesting. It really does feel like the designers really went out of their way to add a unique platforming element to each level. As with previous games, the levels themselves are primarily divided into 3 different phases. There are longer, more traditional platforming areas where Mega Man will have to jump over things and shoot enemies, and there'll be many stationary enemies that will begin shooting at Mega Man once you reach a certain point. Then there's smaller, almost puzzle-like challenge areas that might be a little bit more dangerous for Mega Man, but smaller, and Mega Man will have to find a way through these smaller areas. Then there's longer, quicker moving areas where a lot of enemies may be rushing at Mega Man, or there'll be no real safe place for Mega Man to stand. These longer areas are usually towards the end of the levels. The game does a really good job at incorporating its creative platforming element with the pace of its game design. Also, I do want to go back and mention that the jetpack and punch armor add a whole nother layer to the level design in that there are hidden areas and alternative pathways here. Now here's a mention of spoilers. I did find Proto Man in this game on Tomahawk Man's level. He gave me an item that I had no idea what it did until a moment ago when I googled its use. Apparently it allocates weapon energy to the weapon that has the least amount of energy. But either way, the secret of finding Proto Man and getting an item was really exciting and something cool that I hadn't seen in a game in the Mega Man series before. There were also energy tanks that I found. Now, I didn't 100% all the secrets in the game, that's just not really the way that I play games personally, but the secrets that I found I really liked. And overall, the secrets and alternative pathways just added another element of intrigue to the gameplay. Mega Man 6, like previous games, is a platformer shooter, meaning that the shooting gameplay makes up a large portion of what you do in the game. Mega Man 6 has a large variety of low-level enemies that Mega Man will have to blast throughout the levels. These enemies attack Mega Man in a variety of ways. Some are stationary and will shoot at Mega Man once they show up on the screen. Some are stationary, but then they'll attempt to ram Mega Man when he shows up. There are also smaller aerial enemies that spawn as Mega Man moves through a level. These will usually charge Mega Man. None of the lower level enemies here in Mega Man 6 do anything particularly novel or new for the series, except the one that you can flip into the oil, but they are all very well placed along with the platforming design to keep the game interesting. Now fortunately, even though the enemies themselves might not do anything particularly new, the artistic direction of these low-level enemies is wonderful. In Windman's level, you face these really cool panda robots. They are essentially just a turret, but this level of artistry adds a lot of fun value for me. Tomahawk Man's level also has really cool cowboy robots. Yamato Man's level has these funny tanuki robots, and these radical spinning spear guys. Also, the ASST robot knockoff from Mega Man 5 is back in this game, but he only shows up one time. So I kind of liked him as making a cameo. Blizzard Man's level has really cute enemies that look like curling stones sliding around on the ice. The Mets are back as a repeat, but I'm always happy to see them. Plant Man's stage has these really cool bugs. Centaur Man's stage has these really cool pelicans that spit fish. Overall, Mega Man 6's lower level robot enemies have an artistic flair that rivals the best in the classic series, and really the best of anything you would see on an 8-bit system. And they particularly stand out after playing Mega Man 5, which had rather dull lower level enemy design. Not to dig too much at Mega Man 5, because I do not hate that game, but I do want to make this comparison. They really did step up the artistic creativity here. A perfect comparison is that both games have larger enemies that Mega Man will usually encounter alone, and this enemy will jump up in the air and then attempt to slam down on Mega Man. In Mega Man 5, this enemy looked like the boring dollar store Guts Man, but in Mega Man 6 we get this cute SD Gundam looking guy that has jetpacks. There's also giant squids and cool skull spider robots in Mega Man 6, so yeah, overall I really love this game's art design. There's also a couple really cool mid-bosses in the game. There's a really cool mid-boss that is a guy riding a giant frog, and a really cool Donkey Kong looking robot that you have to push away by shooting him in his lower part of his robot design, and you damage him by jumping up. It's a cool gimmick. Since I made the comparison earlier to Mega Man 5, I think it's only fair to make a comparison here to Mega Man 4. The mid-bosses here are not as cool as the giant animals that we got in Mega Man 4, especially the giant hippo. But the mid-bosses here are definitely a step up and have their own personality, and I really liked them. I'm also really happy to say that the artistic flair really carries over into the stage's overall design aesthetics. Plant Man's level has these flowers that hold health power-ups that maybe adds a little bit of cool lore about how maybe plants power the robots in this world. Yamato Man's level has this ancient Japanese art design, and Nightman has a cool medieval art design. Sure, some of the levels like Blizzard Man's ice theme blend in with stuff we've seen before in Mega Man, but the standout level art here is definitely strong enough to give this game its own identity. Specifically, I do really want to highlight the Western art direction of Tomahawk Man's level. It's really cool and has this retro robot Red Dead Redemption 8-bit vibe going on. And the sunset here is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in any retro game. Tomahawk Man's stage also has the best music. It's a good song with a Western flair to it, and Yamato Man's track is also pretty decent. But overall here, the music didn't really feel like anything too special to me. 4 had its abrasive weirdness, 3 had the power rock, and 2 had the poppy, catchy tunes, and all of it just kind of spoiled me, I think. None of the music here in Mega Man 6 is outright bad, but none of it just really stands out to me. Now, pivoting back to the gameplay itself, I'll talk about the Robot Master fights. During this playthrough, I used a boss order list that I'd found online, and I still felt like there was a decent challenge to the fights. There is nothing here that really breaks the mold, but each boss has a fun, challenging pattern to it, and it feel like the safe zones are a little bit smaller here during these fights, and it added an extra challenge that I really liked. Sure, using the right weapon makes these bosses significantly easier, but they don't just crumple up like paper and burn up. There's still a bit of fight in them even if you do have the right weapon. For me, as someone who just played the previous 5 games, I'll say the Robot Master fights here were fun, and I really liked them. Now, speaking on the weapons you earn from the Robot Masters, I usually find myself gravitating towards Mega Man's default weapon in all of the games. So I'm not going to complain that the weapons here are useless, but many of them do kind of seem like things I wouldn't use much. But I'll highlight Tomahawk Man's weapon. It's very useful, it spins upwards and it's fun to use. Now touching on the art and visual presentation of the Robot Masters, some of them here really stand out. Centaur Man is really cool and has a unique design where the bottom of his body is like a horse. Blizzard Man has a round shape and I found that really fun. Plant Man is ugly and goofy but in kind of an endearing way, and I like the classic European vibe of Nightman's design. Now you'll notice that a lot of these robots have a bit of a robots of the world design to them. They seem like they're from different places, and this is deliberate. And here is where I'll talk a little bit more about the storyline, and I'll say that there are spoilers ahead for those of you who would like to play the game without knowing anything about the storyline. In this game, it starts with a robot tournament that's caused all the robots to come together and battle each other. And then a new villain named X shows up and causes them to turn against Mega Man. The beginning cutscene explains this, and unfortunately this cutscene doesn't have anything that makes it stand out like the scarf in Mega Man 5's cutscene, or that really slick animation of Mega Man 4's iconic cutscene, or Mega Man 2's cool display of the building with Mega Man 2 standing up, or Mega Man 3's incredible song. The cutscene here at the beginning of Mega Man 6 is kind of dull, and the story presented here is pretty lame. 3 gives us the mystery of Proto Man's betrayal, and 4 introduces Dr. Cossack and raises the stakes, but 5 does something really strange that I did not like. At the beginning when we're introduced to X, he looks exactly like Wily. And I thought for sure there must be some kind of twist here, maybe it's a robot version of Wily or something, but spoiler alert, it's literally just Dr. Wily with sunglasses on. This is the 3rd game in a row where we have a Wily fake out. The game presents an enemy at the beginning who is supposedly not Dr. Wily. But here it's done in a really weird way with no climactic payoff. It's just Dr. Wily in sunglasses saying his name is X. So with all the Robot Masters played through, now we go to Wileys Castle, X's castle, and I gotta say that this is actually the worst part of the game. It's kind of like their creative gas tank has ran out for this final stretch. As I look over my notes for these levels, there's almost nothing that really stood out to me, except an early moment where there's a flipping platform and you have to time your punch just right to get to a new area, and that was cool. There's also a standout moment in one of the X levels where the floors are designed in such a way that you can't tell where you're going to fall through. I got nothing out of this, and I don't like these kind of trap level designs. Usually Mega Man does a really good job of showing you what you can and can't do. But the real disappointment of X's Castle is the boss fights here. They would have been generic mid-level boss fights, but they're very disappointing as something that's part of the finale. The first is a conveyor belt boss that's boring to look at and boring to fight. The second boss is a wall turret that goes up and down, but it's just a gun on wheels that goes up and down a wall and causes rocks to fall on you. The third X Castle boss fight is a giant robot with a Met piloting it, which is kind of cool, but it honestly just looks unfinished. And when you compare it to the other interesting ways the games have used Mets and kind of reinvented them for fights, it honestly just kind of looks unfinished. None of the X's Castle fights are outright terrible or bad like the turret fight in Mega Man 2. There's a little bit of added challenge here that I always like at the end, but it just kind of feels a bit like a dud this late in a game that's really been so creative up to this point. Now we have a fight against X himself where he's in a wrecking ball, which does look cool. It's just a little bit of an easy fight. You just kind of stay to the side and dodge the beams that go to the ground and spread out. There's just not a lot to the fight. I did like the way that X looks with his sunglasses inside of the wrecking ball. You beat him and Wily takes off the sunglasses, and yeah, surprise, it's Wily. This is a really weird artistic and storytelling decision. I really don't know what they were going for here. And now you move on to Wily's official castle, which does have a cool enough kind of, basic but interesting design here. Now, first off, we do get the best of the final bosses here. It's a dinosaur. It shoots platforms that you need to ride up to shoot him, which is a cool idea. But come on, look at this dinosaur. It's a dollar store looking giant robot compared to the dragon in Mega Man 2 or the giant animals in Mega Man 4. There's just not a lot of personality to it, and the colors don't look very good together. The sixth final boss is like the Donkey Kong robot, but rather than being a Donkey Kong robot, he's a generic tank. It's a really weird decision. I think the game would have benefited from switching the Donkey Kong robot with the tank and just letting you fight the Donkey Kong robot later in the game. You may have noticed that here I barely mention the levels themselves. That's just because there's not really a lot to mention in these final levels. None of the castle levels overall feel particularly interesting. There's a bit of a challenge here, which I do like. And there's nothing totally awful here. But it's just kind of a bit of a fizzle out experience compared to what we saw earlier in the game. And again, I'm playing these games one after the other for the sake of reviewing them. And I can't help but remember the cool, crazy fights like the giant Guts Man and the giant Met and the cool boss that's like a room that's like sliding apart. There's just so many cool final bosses, and it's just a bummer here that, these really kind of just feel like either incomplete or just kind of washed up generic designs. Now the game gives us the boss rush, and this is my sixth Mega Man boss rush, and I'll say I love this part of the game. I know it is predictable, but it is a tradition, and it's a fun way to test your skills and manage your resources to get through these fights. It also gives the player a sense of growth and adds a little bit of a storyline showing us how Mega Man has grown so much throughout the game, that these bosses that are so epic, and at the end of each stage Mega Man can just beat them one after the other. The design of the room doesn't have anything particularly new or interesting, and we do get the tubes cracking, which we've seen before, and it's a nice touch. And I like the boss rush here as much as I've liked it in any of the other games. Then we get a final Wily fight, which is okay. At first, he's in a hopping robot that is very challenging, and I liked it. You gotta time the slide just right to not get crushed by him. Then he fights you in a disappearing robot that, again, this is, I think, the third time in a row that Wily's final form has been a robot that reappears and disappears and shoots lasers down. It's not bad, and it is short, and it kind of comes after the hopping robot, which is a bit of a highlight. So it's not the worst Wily fight imaginable, but it's not great. But I still had fun, even when I'm saying that, Mega Man 5 or 6 or whichever Mega Man game might have these moments of less creativity, I'm still having fun with them. And again, none of it has been as bad as the turret room from Mega Man 2. Now, here at the ending, we do have a new twist. Mega Man actually decides to arrest Dr. Wily, which is kind of cool and kind of interesting. And the game gives us this really cool shot of a newspaper spread of Wily behind bars. This felt really different, and I liked it. There's maybe a bit of a sense of humor to it. I don't know. I liked it. It's not as iconic as, the final shots of Mega Man riding on a train or Mega Man running while the lower part of the screen shows these other robot masters, or, Dr. Wileys Castle exploding or anything like that. But I liked it. I thought it was kind of a cute, interesting, and a bit of a twist, that Dr. Wily finally winds up behind bars. Though I do also want to mention that I did miss Proto Man. Proto Man, in my playthrough, I only saw him one time. You can mention in the comments if he's in here more. But, I like Proto Man, and it would have been cool to see him more, but I don't hold that against the game. It's just, maybe a personal side note. I like Proto Man. And here I'll allude a little bit to what I said at the beginning. Mega Man 7 is going to directly carry this. When I get to that review, I'll discuss that. At the beginning, you see Dr. Wily escape from prison, which is cool and kind of exciting. And Dr. Wily being away from his lab is a direct part of Mega Man 7's early storyline. And again, I like that this is a different take on the ending of these games. So overall, looking at the modern fun factor of this game, I'll say that it's great. It does have a lot of fun factor. What you do in the game as gameplay and what you see stands out and is fun and is cool to look at. There's a lot of good stuff here. The music doesn't stand out to me, but none of it was awful. And so, in the context of the Mega Man series, I do hold that against this game a little bit because, they've set the bar so high, but nothing here distracted or took away from the fun I had with what I saw and then playing the game itself. The Robot Master portion of the game is great, and it is significantly better than the Wily portion of the game. And the Wily portion of the game here is, significantly worse in my opinion than some of the other Wily portions that we've seen, particularly the boss fights in the castles. The rocket armor and the punch armor are great additions to the game. They look cool, they feel cool to use. These are big new ideas that I like to see in a game, especially in, a sixth game. They've taken it so far, and in a lot of ways you can tell that they really are pushing these ideas, and I really liked it. And specifically, I really liked what the rocket armor and the punch armor brought to the game. They also had the hidden areas in the levels, which do add a little bit of replayability. If you're a 100% kind of person and you want to find everything, there's stuff to find in this game, and I really like that. I think that's a fun touch. I think that's cool and a unique thing for the Mega Man series at large. So again, moving on to the context, I'll say the overall modern fun factor of Mega Man 6 is very strong, and it is a lot of fun. So looking at the context where this game exists in modern gaming context and in the history of where Mega Man was when it came out, I see this game as being stuck under two very large looming shadows. The previous games in the series cast a large shadow over this game because they were very good and they were quickly released over the years prior to this game's release. And I think people at the time, and still feel at the time, that this game kind of represents an oversaturation of the Mega Man franchise. I honestly did myself before I played it. And having played it now, I'll say no, this is not oversaturation. This game still clearly is made with passion. There are cool platforming ideas, cool artistic ideas, cool power-up ideas. There's a lot here to like. And the other shadow that this game has is clearly Mega Man X. It seems that even Capcom felt that Mega Man 6 just kind of had too many things going against it because they didn't publish it in North America. This game was actually published by Nintendo overseas, which is really interesting. So when Mega Man 6 finally came out, in North America, it came out after Mega Man X. So in every way, it kind of looks like in the past and even in the present, X is the next big step for the Mega Man series, and a lot of people just kind of see this as a side note. If you look at all the other Mega Man games on the NES, each one of them kind of has their unique thing that makes them stand out kind of within the context of the series. Even Mega Man 5 got an anime OVA that featured the cartridge and featured the Robot Masters in it. Mega Man 6 seems forgotten. It seems like everyone was ready to move on before it even came out. And this context actually makes me kind of want to champion Mega Man 6. I think there's a lot of quirky, cool art design in the enemies. There's a lot of unique platforming mechanics here. The rocket and punch armor really do stand out from what came before it in the series. And it all comes together in something really cool and more than the sum of its parts. Mega Man 6 also comes on a collection now, so if you buy the classic collection, you're going to get Mega Man 6, and it's definitely one worth playing. Now, mentioning my nostalgia for the game, I do actually have some hazy, brief memories of it. It was before I was in kindergarten. I was at a church event that happened to have video games set up for the older kids to play. And when I was leaving, I saw that they had Mega Man, and I really wanted to play it. My parents let me play it, but they were actually taking down the TVs and taking down the video games. So I only got to play this game for maybe 3 minutes, and I do remember playing Tomahawk Man's level. So it is weird to me that this game has a brief but very distinctive memory in my nostalgic mind, and that does kind of sprinkle that extra little bit of sauce, that extra bit of connection to this game that really does make me like it a little more. So overall, when I'm going to score this game, I'm going to say that this game is an 8.5 out of 10. Now, looking at how I view these things, I say, a 7 out of 10 game is a game that is a good game for people that really like the genre or like the series, So a 7 out of 10 sports game is only going to appeal to people that want to play that sport and like that series, right? But if people like that sport and like that series, they'll like that 7 out of 10 game. And then an 8 out of 10 game, I say, generally people that like video games and have some sort of connection to the genre would like it. So I'd say Mega Man 6 is a game that if you like video games, if you like platformers, you'll like this game. It's not going to change your life. It's not a standout game that everyone who likes games needs to play. I'd say, a 9 out of 10 game is a game that's a standout game that every gamer will like. And then a 10 out of 10 game is a standout game and, a more than the sum of its parts kind of way, a game that even non-gamers will get some sort of value from, or, every gamer really should play it because they'll like it and see where it fits in the larger gaming world. And so with that kind of mind set, I'll say Mega Man 6 is an 8.5 out of 10. What really held it back is the X and the Wileys Castles. I just felt like the game kind of fizzles out. That second, whatever you want to say, 30% of the game, that second, maybe 40%, it's a big chunk of time and a big chunk of play time that just feels significantly worse than what came before it. But, the highlights, the early parts of the game, the Robot Master levels, super fun, super cool. So again, I'll say Mega Man 6, 8.5 out of 10. I really, really liked it. If you're a Mega Man fan, it's a no-brainer. You got to play it. So I want to say thanks to everyone for watching. Thank you for all the likes and subscribes. It really means a lot to me. It really makes my day. And then I also want to say thanks to all the people who have posted gameplay videos on YouTube. I do borrow footage because I don't have a capture card for my Nintendo Switch. So there's a link in the description to the footage I borrowed. And, thanks again, everyone. And I hope you all have a great day. Bye.